Coming up on NC Impact.
Cities all over the country are competing to build these facilities, and that's something we don't take lightly. So it isn't just how great the facility is, it's how great the experience they have from when they get off the highway.
Amateur sports are one of the fastest growing sectors in tourism. We'll find out how communities are capitalizing on this sports tourism boom. This is NC Impact.
NC Impact is a PBS North Carolina production in association with the University of North Carolina School of Government. Funding for NC Impact is made possible by
changing the course of people's lives. That's the impact UNC Health and the UNC School of Medicine work to deliver every day. Our 40,000 team members across the state of North Carolina are committed to caring for you, our patients and communities, as well as educating the next generation of healthcare professionals. Individually, we can do a little, but collectively, we can do a lot to create impact.
Welcome to NC Impact. I'm Anita Brown-Graham. Families are spending thousands of dollars and traveling thousands of miles each year for youth sports. The money these families spend on hotels, restaurants, and shopping adds up for local communities. NC Impact's Sloan Heffernan introduces us to two North Carolina families investing in the travel sports experience.
The price to play is high and the odds for going pro are low. Only 2% of high school athletes go on to play at the top level of college sports. The families we spoke to say they aren't banking on the big leagues. They say they just want their kids to have some fun and learn a few lessons along the way.
Come on, Chris.
Welcome to White Cross Recreation Center in Chapel Hill, home to the Orange County Crushers.
Stay in front of it.
A travel baseball team made up of 11-year-old boys. In this league, the boys of summer play long after the traditional baseball season ends.
Travel ball, we have a fall season, a spring season. We go into the summer. We've done some winter training in the past as well. Give it to Reed, and Reed will throw it to you.
Phil Holmes is the coach and also a dad to one of the players. On average, this team practices 3 days a week and travels out of town to tournaments about every other weekend. Playing in this league is a big investment in both time and money.
Just the tournament fees and the practice fees and the field rental and all that stuff was about $600. The first baseman had two choices.
And you factor in travel expenses for hotel and food, it adds up.
I'd say for us it's probably about $3,000, $3,500 for the year.
The Crushers travel mostly in-state, but several tournaments require overnight stays, a real score for host communities.
You're staying at the hotel in Goldsboro and eating at the Applebee's next to the hotel and putting money into economies that maybe wouldn't otherwise get that money.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Kimberly and Michael Soden also travel for sports. The couple's 3 boys play soccer, hockey, tennis, lacrosse, and golf. Tournaments routinely take them out of state.
Usually, when they travel, the whole family's going. So family 5, that's 2 hotel rooms for us.
How are you looking at your team?
Club sports cost the Soden family thousands of dollars each year, but they say it's money well spent.
For me, I think it's the leadership, the competitiveness, as well as the focus on goals.
And then send somebody off the infield.
Back at White Cross Recreation Center, it's close to bedtime for these little ball players. The coach says they could all use some rest after getting back from an out-of-town tournament the night before.
I think there are some positives for a lot of communities. From the parent perspective, sometimes you do feel like there is a little bit of a race to nowhere.
But it's a price they're willing to pay to play ball.
As long as it's fun and as long as he loves it, I want him to keep playing.
Holmes also has a daughter who travels for competitive horseback riding. He says that investment makes travel baseball look small, but he says competing in equestrian events makes his teenage daughter feel strong and confident, and he says that's priceless.
Love that. Thank you, Sloan. Joining me now is Amanda Baker. Amanda is Visit North Carolina's Partner Marketing Manager. Amanda, help us wrap our minds around how much of an economic boom these youth sports can be for a community.
Absolutely, Anita. These youth sporting tournaments bring not only the youth but they also bring their families, including parents, siblings, sometimes even grandparents. A great example of this is the Rocky Mount Event Center and the different events that they host, catering to youth at their different facilities there. They come, they stay in the hotels, they visit the local restaurants, and they visit attractions in the area as well. This leads to great opportunities for business in the area, as well as generating tax revenue and local jobs for the area as well.
So our viewers all over the state are saying, wait, why aren't we doing that too? Talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges communities might face in attracting these sport events.
Some of the challenges that communities might face include having the infrastructure in order to host these different events. So one thing that I would recommend for communities to look at is finding out what facilities they have in their area and what different events they might be able to host, including looking at communities around them and seeing what assets they might have available. So if a community is able to host an event because they have the venue, but maybe not the hotels, potentially partnering with another community so that they're able to host the event.
Oh, that's terrific advice. Amanda, how big do you see this industry getting? What's the opportunity here for communities going forward?
I see this continuing to grow. Traditionally, the youth sports and the sports tourism industry has been seen as a recession-resistant industry, and it's something where we see parents continuing to invest and prioritize their children's athletic endeavors. Communities can absolutely get involved with whether it's building, attracting, or creating their own event in their community unique to their different assets.
And as North Carolina grows in size, will communities expect to have most people coming from other parts of the state, or will people be crossing state lines for these activities?
I think you'll see both. I mean, there are regional tournaments, but there's also national tournaments. I mean, you look at the AAU Junior Olympics, which was held in Greensboro, or the Little League Softball World Series in Greenville. These different events bring people from across the country, and then there's other events that'll bring people internationally. So it's a little bit of a mix.
Well, thank you for that. As a soccer mom, gymnastics mom, swimming mom, basketball mom, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't the only person who was traveling all over the Southeast.
You're not the only one.
Appreciate it. It's clear that youth travel sports have become a booming business. Communities across the state and nation are competing for visitors. ncIMPACT's David Hurst visits Rocky Mount and shows us how they've been able to breathe life into their downtown with a state-of-the-art sports facility.
Anita, the city of Rocky Mount opened an outdoor sports complex in 2006. It hosts more than 100,000 players and visitors every year. So when they recently built an indoor facility in the heart of downtown, they had an idea of what kind of positive impact it could have.
That's a big hit, especially for the volleyball teams.
David Joyner has been the general manager of the Rocky Mount Event Center since December of 2019.
These are the tip and rib bleachers we put down.
Growing up in Rocky Mount, he never envisioned something like this in his hometown.
I remember my first weekend looking at a volleyball tournament, and it was special when you sit there and you see thousands of people, you know, from literally all over the country, from Washington State to Florida to New York, you know, in downtown Rocky Mount.
The 165,000 square foot state-of-the-art facility is home to 8 basketball hardwood courts or 16 volleyball courts. The facility has hosted dozens of youth basketball and volleyball tournaments since opening in 2018.
Most of our volleyball tournaments average between 90 teams to 140 teams. And when you times that by the number of people just on the team, the coaches, the staff, and then their parents, but the grandma comes and the uncle comes and the aunt comes. And so it's huge as far as what that does for your economy.
County leaders say the Rocky Mount Event Center is expected to bring an economic impact of $264 million in new spending over the first 10 years.
And so we have thousands of people that will come in to downtown, visit our restaurants, our local attractions, our shops, fill our hotels.
And since Rocky Mount shares a county border with Nash and Edgecombe counties, there's a good bit of cross-county collaboration. Because David Joyner says when families come to visit from out of town, they're looking for more than just a nice facility.
Because yes, we have a space for people to play sports, but they're coming here for an experience. And cities all over the country are competing to build these facilities, and that's something we don't take lightly. So it isn't just how great the facility is, it's how great the experience they have from when they get off the highway.
And between the offerings at Rocky Mount Mills and the opening of new businesses in downtown, Joyner believes they've created a great experience for anyone visiting. And he says he looks forward to the possibility of diversifying the sports tournaments they host, including offering pickleball and cornhole tournaments.
To think if you can have the majority of weekends in the year in your community in a rural city, bringing in thousands of people, that's just really exciting, and the growth that's going to come from that.
Along with sports tournaments, the Rocky Mount Event Center also hosts conferences and concerts. Local tourism leaders say the event center attracted about 50,000 visitors to the Rocky Mount area in 2022.
Thank you so much, David. Joining me now is Hill Caro. Hill is the founder and CEO of the company Sports Properties. Hill, you've led the organizing committees for over 100 events, so let's just start there. What's the value proposition for sports tourism, and why should communities care?
Anita, thanks very much for having me on the program this morning. There is a significant value proposition for sports tourism. Tourism itself is the largest industry on the planet, and so it's a very important industry worldwide. And that North Carolina has a lot of assets to build on to take advantage of that industry, and sports is one of the significant components of that. And it's considered to be growing at a rate of at least 3% per annum. And so, as was said, it's intended to be a really recession-proof type industry, one that really any community of any size can take advantage of, and one that does more than just bring people to town. It, if you had a convention of lawyers or doctors, they're there, they have meetings, sure, there's a local economic impact. But from sports perspective, that puts a different look on your town. They're there for competition, but also there's exposure for your city or community. And sometimes there's broadcast exposure, not only at the high level of national broadcast TV, but also these days, as you might be aware, there's a lot of streaming broadcasts of sports that really are available on the internet around the world. So any community can take advantage of that as well and really bring some great branding and positive exposure to their community. The final piece of that is there's entertainment value as well. Many of these sports events are worthy of spectator participation, not just friends and family. And so your community, it adds to the quality of life to be able to go out and see some of these fun competitive sports events in your hometown.
Okay, so now everybody wants to recruit these amateur sports. For communities that need to raise money to build the infrastructure, the facilities like the one we saw in Rocky Mount, what are some creative ways to go about doing that?
Well, facilities have been developed over time across North Carolina in a variety of different ways. There are some under development in the Raleigh-Durham area, for example, right now that are going to be completely privately financed. Often you find that it's a very worthy public investment, though, as well. And many of our municipal facilities in the state are often geared towards sports and entertainment. And they bring a really nice economic impact to the community and are worthy of our public tax dollars going in. Some creative ways that governments have built such facilities. The Durham Bulls Athletic Park, for example, was built using certificates of participation, which is a financing vehicle that a government unit can use without necessarily going to a bond referendum. Cary is contemplating a new facility in which they plan to put some of the financing for that out for a public vote, public bond referendum. And then elsewhere in Wake County, and this is in other locations across North Carolina too, often hotel, motel, and or prepared food taxes, which in Wake County are referred to as interlocal taxes, can be used for facilities depending on how the regulations are written for each of those. And in Wake County specifically, those funds started out for capital improvements for bringing tourism to the county. They've since expanded to include operational funds for some of those facilities too. But that's just a number of the ways that you can get some infrastructure done in your hometown.
Thank you for that, Hill. Stick with us. We'll be right back to you. For many rural communities, local businesses depend on tourist dollars to bring in revenue. And for some of these communities, sports are a valuable draw. ncIMPACT's Evan Howell visits Rockingham to see how they're using racing to attract people to the area.
Rockingham was a vibrant community in the early 20th century, driven by industry and those in pursuit of the American dream. But as industry left in the early 90s, so did the downtown dollars, and this rural community found itself searching for ways to bring both revenue and tourists back to the area. But one tradition always stood out.
Everybody loves the Rock.
The Rock is Rockingham.
It was 1969 when Rockingham Speedway started hitting its peak, becoming one of racing's premier destinations. The Rock also attracted racing fans from all over the country who spent plenty in city hotels and restaurants.
There would be an influx of folks just, that would come and flock to Richmond County here at the Rock. Anywhere from 60 to 70,000 people, which, our population here in Richmond County is around 43,000. So you can imagine what it did to our local economy.
The Speedway fell on hard times in the early 2000s and closed, only to open up as a testing track a few years later. But recently the complex received a multi-million-dollar grant to repair and improve the facilities.
In the last 10 to 15 years, it has not been in the forefront or in the spotlight. But a resurgence or a rebirth of the Rock, again, that can put us on the map, not only North Carolina, but across the world.
Sports tourism is a growing trend nationally that brought nearly $15 billion in tax revenues into local economies in 2021. Officials say the upgrades and repairs to the raceway and dragway will ultimately bring tax revenues back to this rural community.
That's an impact that really is going to be felt by everyone, with that local tax money from our school system to improvements in our community, how it looks. It's just going to be enormous, and I'm very excited to watch it.
County leaders add that on the one side are the state and local partnerships, but on the other side is the community that drives and influences the way forward.
It's a three-pronged approach to really ramping things up and getting back to racing in North Carolina. It's where our roots were.
Roots that will continue to grow as plans are underway to add festivals and concerts to the Rockingham calendar as another source of tourism revenue.
Control chaos.
For ncIMPACT, I'm Evan Howell.
Evan, thank you so much for that. Let's bring back our experts. Joining us for our ncIMPACT Roundtable is Mike Edwards. Mike is an associate professor with the College of Natural Resources at NC State University. Mike, let's start with you. Outside of the economic impact, which we focused on quite a bit, what are some other ways that a community benefits by hosting these sporting events?
Well, and thanks for having me, Anita. And I agree. I think that putting the impacts outside of economic impacts is really important because really there are a lot of benefits. And I think the Rockingham example is a good one in terms of that the identity of a lot of these communities can be really enhanced by the exposure that's given by the spotlight on the communities that they've become a reputation of the host of these events. I think there's a very sort of identified feel-good factor of the social kind of benefits of these communities when they are successfully hosting events and they're seen in a way that that attracts people to the community. I think it's also important to note that the investment in sport and sport facilities is particularly important if you're considering the benefits to the local community. I mean, the events are only going to happen periodically, and so the facilities themselves should be designed and built in a way that local local youth organizations, adults can access these facilities and can enhance physical activity and well-being among community members as well. I mean, that's one of the great things about sport facilities. And the last thing is some of my research is focused on the way in which some of these sport events and putting them on can increase community capacity in other ways, whether that's building partnerships, increasing the volunteer skills among the community members and things like that. And so you've got a great opportunity to leverage these events to again, build that community capacity.
Yeah, I love that. It takes community capacity to get it off the ground, but it's the gift that keeps on giving in terms of continuing to build community capacity. So Amanda, let me turn to you and ask you to just explain a little bit about what Visit NC does to help support communities in attracting these sporting events.
Yeah, absolutely. So Visit North Carolina, under the brand of Sports NC, actually works with the North Carolina Sports Association, the North Carolina Amateur Sports, and all 100 counties across the state in order to attract these different events to the state. We work to market it to event organizers and help collect and generate leads that we share out with communities, connecting event organizers with communities that could potentially be these host destinations. And I will have to say the community is a huge part of doing that. Being able to include them and have their support is crucial.
That's terrific. So Hill, it was recently announced that North Carolina will host the 2029 World University Games. You played a big role in making that pitch. How big of a deal is that to the state, and what impact will it have to our communities?
Well, Anita, thank you. It's a huge deal for the state. It's the World University Games are actually the second largest global Olympic multi-sport event on the planet. And it's the largest event in the world for student athletes. Their collegiate age is 18 to 25. So North Carolina has never hosted an event of this scale and worldwide recognition. So it really takes us up a substantial notch. We've done some mega events in the past. The Olympic Festival back in the 80s, the World Special Olympics Summer Games in the 90s, and now we're taking it to a whole new level. And but it will have significant impacts across our state. The event itself is so big that it will actually go from the Raleigh Convention Center in downtown Raleigh all the way to the Greensboro Coliseum and encompass at least 13 of our colleges and universities, some private facilities, some municipal facilities in between. It uses about 50 different venues for either competition or training. It'll bring 150 countries of the world. It gets over 3,000 hours of international broadcast coverage to a worldwide audience of at least 400 million. And then the economic impacts you were talking about previously, the low end on independent third-party studies show 150 million, and some of the high end goes over 300 million. So it'll really have a big impact on our state. And one thing I like to say about it, it provides a really big deadline out there for some of those big community projects that we've been trying to get done. Let's take a Dix Park or transportation systems and all. If the world's coming here to North Carolina, certainly we want those projects done and showing them off to the world when they come.
Well, we're in the big leagues. I don't want to end this conversation without turning to you, Mike, to talk a little bit. What does the data tell you about what areas of sports tourism communities should be focusing on pursuing?
Sure, and I think it's kind of twofold. And one is, and I think Amanda kind of pointed this out in terms of your existing assets. I think an important aspect of this is to engage with your community and understand kind of what you have already there relative to whether that's youth sports clubs or adult sports activities, things that you're already doing well and have an infrastructure in place that you can, again, galvanize volunteers and organizing groups and things like that, rather than trying to go out and sort of build new stuff that isn't already in place. But I think also it's important to understand kind of what else is out there, and you don't want to duplicate. I mean, the competition is pretty significant for a lot of sports. There are only so many soccer complexes and volleyball facilities and everything, and so you don't want to duplicate what everybody else is doing if you don't have the capacity in place to kind of stand out in that. So I think it's important that you understand the landscape, understand what your strengths and opportunities are within your community, and then figure out what makes sense in terms of standing out in that landscape.
I feel like we could go so much further on this conversation around differentiation, but unfortunately we're out of time. So let me thank you, Amanda, Mike, Hill, for being with us, for the important work you're doing in this state, for how you're encouraging even more parents to spend even more money on these youth sports. It's a good thing. And I want to, of course, thank our local leaders who are featured in the episode. They generously agree to have us share their inspirational stories and the work that they're doing together, and we are grateful for that. Of course, we never end without thanking our amazing audience for watching and engaging. You know, working together is often the solution. We want you to tell us what your community is doing or how we can help you. You can email us at ncimpact@unc.edu or send a message on Twitter or Facebook. And be sure to join us every Friday night at 7:30 on PBS North Carolina for new episodes of NC Impact. Coming up on NC Impact.
It takes a team to get places, and when you have help, it works out.
Many of our state's residents face distinct barriers to successful entrepreneurship. We'll find out how some communities are expanding opportunities for their small business owners.
NC Impact is a PBS North Carolina production in association with the University of North Carolina School of Government. Funding for NC Impact is made possible by
changing the course of people's lives. That's the impact UNC Health and the UNC School of Medicine work to deliver every day. Our 40,000 team members across the state of North Carolina are committed to caring for you, our patients and communities, as well as educating the next generation of healthcare professionals. Individually, we can do a little, but collectively, we can do a lot to create impact.